So the first time my mom asked me if I was gay, we were stopped at a stoplight waiting to turn left, which is the perfect place for that conversation to happen. She was like, Matt, no matter what you say, your dad and I are still going to love you. And I answered her honestly. I said, you know what, I don't really know. I got to think about it. It was a beautiful moment. Then my mom turned left into oncoming traffic. The light was still red. So now, anytime I think about my sexual orientation, my life flashes before my eyes. My name is Matt Storrs. I'm a comedian, storyteller, and actor, and I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. It started with, being a child and having a dream of being a comedian. Like in my middle school yearbook, what do you want to be when you grow up was a comedian. And I did not realize all you had to do to be a comedian was just go to a bar that had an open mic. So I didn't realize how low I had set the bar. So as time progressed and as I was performing a lot, I was like, oh, I have to move eventually. And out of all the places that were an option, New York seemed the most beautiful, most enjoyable, and most exciting. So I think that kind of was the idea, but it would create the greatest challenge for my creativity and what I could possibly do. A daily grind, daily basis. I do have a day job, I'm an attorney. And then in terms of comedy, it's going out, finding shows, supporting shows, making connections. In terms of storytelling, it's trying to find stories from my youth or recent experiences to kind of build out. And then, acting-wise, it's just finding what I can, things that seem interesting to me. But, I'd say the storytelling and comedy are definitely more my primary focus. I have written and I've started performing a solo show called Portly Lutheran Know-It-All. It is about my time growing up in a somewhat religious household, but then going to a very, very conservative Christian middle school. Just some of the conflict that arose out of that, my struggle to make friends and with miscommunications and just kind of dealing with the religious zealotry that I encountered. I think it's funny in a lot of ways through my reactions to those sorts of situations. So for instance, they try to disprove the theory of evolution. And to do that, they talk about how the fossil record doesn't have in-between animals. And as a visual aid, our teacher brought out a stuffed animal that was half cow, half a whale. So the front half of it was a cow and the back half of it was a whale. Just absurd to visualize a stuffed animal looking like that. And she said that if there was any instance where any of these things could be related or together, and we could bring that up as a theory, we got to take them home. So I raised my hand thinking, that's how school worked. And I was like, yeah, that looks like a manatee. And I was excused from science class because I had provided a reasonable theory to support the idea of evolution. So stuff like that where it's, me thinking that I was just engaging in a normal class sort of situation, but didn't realize that I was actually kind of in conflict with those people. And then, just kind of the regular adolescent difficulties of how do you make friends, kind of compounded with how do you make friends with people that are, think some people are less than other people.
I have a new tip. Anytime you break up with somebody, this is what I do. Anytime I break up with somebody or our relationship ends, I will update my will and I will designate a portion of my 401k to go to my ex. So that whenever I die, eventually a lawyer will have to seek them out and be like, Matt dated you long enough for him to learn your last name. Here's $15. It's like a class action lawsuit you don't know you're in. The dates were bad, but the money is nice.
Yeah, so I'd say with, social media, Twitter, everything like that, it's, that old adage, don't post anything you wouldn't want to tell your grandparents or anything like that. But also, like, the idea that, oh, somebody's going to get offended. If somebody can get offended by my joke, I have not done a good enough job of clarifying my joke. If my intent is to rile people up and make them uncomfortable, that's fine. But the payoff for that has to be so astronomically outsized that it envelops that discomfort that you created. If that discomfort remains, in any way, shape, and form, the joke is not successful. Once you kind of accept the idea that your audience can be offended by something you say, and then once you can be receptive to that feedback of like, hey, you might not really understand what you're saying in this context, that can be really freeing.
I decided I wanted to be cool, and in my mind, one of the coolest things you can do is smoke cigars. And so in an hour, I learned everything I could about cigars, and I went to my local cigar shop. And they must have thought I was really cool because the cashier met me at the door and she's like, hey, you like those bold and strong cigars? I said, yeah, because I wanted the lie to be real. And then she invited me into the humidor and she sold me the most expensive cigar there. And then she invited me to smoke it inside the store. And when I woke up, the EMTs explained that high levels of nicotine when you've never smoked before will cause something called a vasovagal response, and it'll make you pass out. And I was also told I was not allowed to come back to the cigar shop because they didn't have something called liability insurance.
I'd say that I do experience a fair amount of self-doubt, especially if I'm trying to write new material. You have an idea that you feel is very funny and you don't exactly know how to express it, and then your avenue to try it out is it's an open mic where it's filled with other comedians feeling the same thing. And sometimes you go in with your A material, your best material, you start it out, and then you do just one new joke. That one joke doesn't work. Everything else gets some chuckles because people have heard it before, but it can be kind of draining and disheartening. So sometimes, you put it into a regular book show, everything's been going really well, so you put a half-baked idea into it. And, it can go well, it can go poorly, but that's kind of the magic of it. If it goes really well and you say something unexpected, people can feel that. And if it goes really poorly, so long as you've had experience to know how to deal with that immediate rejection, you can spin that too and make it fun. It's a consistent testing of figuring out what works, what doesn't work, and what you care about and what you're experiencing and how you can process it through who you are as a person, then who you are on stage. Yeah, the worst show I've ever had, I once performed at a show that the producer had produced a lot of bar shows and everything like that, but they got in with one of the like music venues in Phoenix. They made a lot of money off of making like fake articles online and stuff like that, like ad clicks or something. So they decided they were going to do a joke bit about doing a terrorist attack in the various places in the United States as the opening segment of the show. So they did that and talked about how there would be a coordinated attack under this hypothetical at 8 a.m. at all of these different airports. And so then I got on stage after a room. Normally, a host will make people feel welcome. They did not feel welcome. They felt, should we call the FBI? And so that's where the context of where I came into the show. And so what I tried to do is I tried to fact check them and pointed out like they did not specify where or what time zone, 8 a.m. And so like just, trying to rip apart this concept that they had developed. And so like I had to fight to get that room back into a place of comfort and comedy. And so like now, like I can tell that story, I can tell that, and I can, I can find the humor in it, and I can find some joy out of that horrible experience. But at the same time, like in that room, the feeling was like, what did we just see? Are we safe? Is what's going to happen? And I think that, just in terms of how to rebound, in terms of, I've had plenty of sets where I've been really, really insistent on like, oh, this has got to be good. This is my big opportunity, everything like that. It doesn't go well. I don't get the call back. I don't get whatever. And ultimately, it's just, okay, try and reflect on what didn't go well, what I didn't do well, what I misstated. Was I, as compassionate or as emotive as I wanted to be? Was I loud enough or whatever? And then you just get back out there, and that's the beauty of comedy, is that there's always, another opportunity to go back and try something new, and rework things. Take years and years off if you wanted to, and then just come back to it with a greater context. But yeah, it's just looking at struggles, looking at failures, and recognizing that that's all right. Well, it's fine. It's a pothole. My suspension's fine. I can keep going.